And I'm Taylor Lobb, as you can see by my picture. I have the same title. We work on the same team doing similar work, where she's responsible for the SPLC. I'm responsible for testing and efforts to support the SPLC.
Awesome. Throughout the talk, we're going to be represented by these little cartoon characters. So an intro to Adobe. You may have heard of us. We're a small startup out of the Bay Area. We have 16,000 employees in 37 countries, so we're not a small startup. We're pretty big. At some point, we're a startup. But what I wanted to point out with this slide, which was given to us by our marketing team here, probably most of this stuff is not relevant to our talk, but the number of employees is relevant to our talk, and then also just the fact that Adobe has software that's installed on, from a survey in 2012, like 99% of personal computers with Adobe Flash, right? So we're everywhere. We kind of had to learn to make sure that security comes first in our product lifecycle, and so that's what we're focused on in the Experience Cloud.
So speaking of the Experience Cloud, I want to talk a little bit about how the company is split up. Most of the people know Adobe as what we refer to as the Creative Cloud and the Document Cloud, right? So you have Acrobat as part of the Document Cloud. You have Creative Suite as part of the Creative Cloud. We are actually part of a business unit within Adobe called the Experience Cloud. And unless you're a marketer for a business somewhere, you probably haven't heard of what we do. But we do digital marketing for corporations, and we're pretty big in that space. So we represented the Experience Cloud, and our experience will be talking about how we've done this in that business unit. As such, we won't be answering any questions about the other two clouds, like Flash or anything like that. So sorry if that's what you came here to find out about. We're not part of that. So I'll give it back over to Julia, and she can take it away.
Okay, so the ideology behind our secure product lifecycle and kind of the program that Taylor and I rolled out is that technology solves a lot of problems. And when you talk and work with technologists, like engineers, which is what we're doing, if you don't have technology in place, they're not going to listen to you or hear what you're saying. If you've got bad processes and bad technology, they're not going to hang out, right? So technology is vitally important. So Taylor's going to talk about that in his case study of static analysis. We're going to talk about kind of some of the automation that we put in place to help support the secure product lifecycle and our engineers. But what's also important, and another key tenet of our SPLC, is the people. So you can see there's like a guy holding all of this, right? So it's technology and people. So within security, there's a good deal of herding cats, maybe. It is something you've probably experienced being a security person. So we've had to combine conscious and consistent cultural change. And I'm going to talk about our Security Champions program and how we rolled out our secure product lifecycle to make sure we had buy-in at all levels. And so we're able to get this to be something that was integrated into our development lifecycle. So just a quick caveat on motivation theory. Something I'm really interested in is psychology and why people do the things they do. And more importantly, maybe in security, and maybe you guys can relate to this, is why people don't do some things. And so there's two primary reasons why a person might do a thing. And a person might do a thing because they're directly paid to do that thing. And paid can include like some form of you just have to do the thing, some kind of forcing them to do the thing. And then the second reason that someone might do a thing is it's something they're excited about, something that they want to do. Think about things that people volunteer for, something that they're interested in, and they would do it. They do it regardless of being paid for it. They do it because it's something that they find fulfilling. So this is kind of what we are trying to drive at Adobe, the second one, as part of our secure product lifecycle, something that fits into the process and appeals to kind of our engineers' intrinsic motivation to write good quality, high quality code. And so we say, security is part of that. And so we appeal to kind of the thing that they want to do. And it's a good way to get the engineers on their side. So, problem statement here. Also, we spent a lot of time on this slide. So please be impressed with all of our transitions here. So we've got the engineering team. This is who we work with primarily for our secure product lifecycle. They're very happy writing code, building sweet features, making our customers happy. all these things, solving difficult engineering problems. They're having a great time. And then we've got some groups that come to them and say, you've got these requirements, right? Like, you kind of have to change some of the things that you're doing to meet these requirements, but they're kind of fuzzy and not that clear. And so the engineers, as you can see by their eyebrows and mouths that I changed, because I'm good at that kind of thing, or they start to get a little confused. And then you have other groups that come to them and they say, and here's the tools and processes that you have to use, which are outside of the tools and processes that you already use to develop software. Go log into this tool over here, and you're going to find your security bugs here, or you're going to find the process over here out of the way. Engineers are still a bit confused. And then you have even more groups, so you got like the security team who's coming, and they're saying, oh, and here's the risk associated with those things, and here's our advice on how to fix them, and here's the remediation, and maybe here's our tool over here that you can use for that too. So the engineers at this point are somewhere around here. They're just mad, right? They're like, we don't know what you guys are getting at. 17 different people are telling me 18 different things to do and different systems to log into. And what do I actually do? And so that's kind of the problem that we were trying to solve with our secure product lifecycle, is saying, okay, let's take everything that everybody has to do for security, build it into a secure product lifecycle, make it the same for all of our teams. The first thing we did here is get buy-in and leverage existing process. So first I went and talked to the developers, and I said, how do you guys develop code? How do you guys push this to production? And where are your code repos, and where do you spend all your time? And so I found out, they spend all their time in Jira and GitHub and all these things. Then I went and talked to program management, and I said, hey guys, how do you prioritize the stuff that you have to do, and product management, and where do you get your priorities, and how can we get there? And so we did discovery there as well, so that helped us to kind of understand the organization. And then finally we went to the engineering leadership team, so these are like the VPs and directors over software engineering, and said, we need your buy-in for this. I need you to name a security champion on your team. Someone on your team has to be responsible for security. And how do we help do that and make our customers happy? So we got all the information about how the software develops and how we communicate that, and what do we care about, and those kind of things from the engineering and program management teams. And so at that point, we go to our service lifecycle. So we call I think you've probably heard of SPLC, the Secure Development Lifecycle. At Adobe, we call it SPLC. You guys notice that a little different secure product lifecycle. And we also have this. This is our service lifecycle at Adobe that we use to develop and release software. This is something that our program management team has developed. You guys see security on there. Ta-da! So it's at the bottom. It's in this line of things that says maintain market security analytics. Those are not even the same parts of speech. And so what does that mean, right? Like it's kind of, it goes back to our cursing developers. Like, we're very confused. What does it mean to security, right? So what I did was I took this and I said, okay, well, let's find out what that means. And then we put security checkpoints at these different points. So this is something where we took the SLC and made it our secure product lifecycle. And so each of these little shields represents an activity that a program manager or an engineer or engineering leadership has to complete. So for engineers, obviously, it's making sure that they're writing secure code, and that includes doing training, and making sure that they're addressing the bugs that get brought into the Jira system that we're bringing to them. And then program managers, it includes making sure that these issues are prioritized, put on people's roadmaps, and get done. And then for engineering leadership, it includes signing off on this stuff, right? Ultimately, that's with them. So I'm not going to talk about each of these things in detail, but just know we got different levels of sign-off and activities there. What I do want to get into is how do we do this? So as I mentioned, we're a small security team. We had me and Taylor and one other engineer on our team when we started, and digital marketing So how do we scale this tiny team to be responsible for all these people and all of the code that they're writing every single day? I think in digital marketing, most of our products actually came from acquisitions. And so we've got different development styles, we've got different release cadences, we've got all kinds of different things that we're trying to work with and leverage. So the way that we did this and the approach that we took here is security champions. So I'm going to talk about that in a second, but also automation. We certainly couldn't have done it without either of those things. And so kind of the takeaway here is, in our opinion, it's easier to teach an engineer to think about security than to have a small team of people think about the nuances of every single product and understand them so deeply that they can give the proper security advice for those things. So we're enabling and empowering our security champions to kind of help be the voice of security on the team. So what is a champion? As I mentioned, we went to product leaders and we asked for a security champion on each of our product teams. And so the definition of a product security champion that I gave them when we were rolling this out is a security champion is an engineer on your team who cares about security. That's something that's important, and I'll talk about our training in a second and kind of how we found some of those people. Someone who's familiar with the application, so don't give me your most junior dev who just joined the team out of college, because they're not going to have the understanding of the product that we need for someone with security. So in most cases, I got lead developers or architects as my security champions. And so the champions, their responsibility is to be point of contact for our security team, as well as to inform our security team of what's going on with their team. So we tell them kind of what's coming from a security point of view. We consolidate all of that confusing stuff that they're getting from all the different groups, and we say, okay, here's your roadmap. Here's what you need to do for security. Here's the things that are required. Here's the things that are nice to have, and here's your dates for getting them done. So we consolidate all of that and hand it to a single person, single point of contact, security team, or security champion, but we also communicated, obviously, to leadership who gave us their buy-in and program management who helps do the prioritization of this thing. So that security champion meets with me. I actually meet with all of our champions every other week to make sure that I'm kept in the loop on what's going on their teams, and they're kept in the loop as far as if anything is shifted on the security side. Our champions have been awesome. So at first we established one champion per team. So in digital marketing, we have 8 solutions, but because I mentioned we are made up of a bunch of acquisitions, it's actually a lot more teams internally. And so we had about 15 champions, and so now we've got somewhere near 35 or something like that. That has kind of grown a lot. So what was something that was interesting when we first started rolling out champions? Most teams were actually pretty excited about this, and I think that's because we appealed to their motivation to write good quality software. So we said, customers are asking about this, it's coming up with the deals and all the things that we're selling, everybody's checking our security, and to write good quality software that's going to delight our customers, we need to include security in that thing, we need to make it so it's not a question, so that's something that's table stakes for all of our security, for all of our solutions. And so we've expanded the number of security champions. It's gotten much bigger. And also our champions have kind of, some of them have really grabbed onto that role and made it something that's more of their full-time gig. So when I first asked for security champions, it was something that we asked the engineering leadership for 20% of their time. So it's like 1 day a week for the champions to work on security projects, make sure we're updated on things, help do with health drive status and stuff like that. Some of my champions have gone and asked their management to make this their full-time gig, so it's in their title, and it's something that they do kind of day in and day out. I had one champion who, after each of our security champion meetings, and I didn't know he was doing this, but it was like a fun surprise, he started sending out security newsletters to his team. So he would find something interesting in the news about security, or pick a favorite OWASP top 10 vulnerability and kind of write it out and say, this is what this is, and here's why it's important, specifically to our application if you're trying to exploit it. And then he would, follow it up with status. And so that was kind of something where he took the role and he turned it up a little bit. I also had one champion who took the role and he made a group of sub-champions. So he's one of the ones who turned it into his full-time gig. He does, I think, 80% security work at this point. And he's got a security reference on each of the Scrum teams. And so that's something where he's kind of outsourced a little bit of that to his team and said, okay, you're responsible for making sure that in all of your Scrum meetings, security is getting properly prioritized. And so he's got eyes on each of the sub-teams on his team. So security champion programs has really been something that's grown a lot. And it's something that at first I kind of hesitated to give them a ton of work because I was like, I know security's overhead. It's really hard. It's bad attitude towards the security or whatever. But it really is something that people have kind of grasped onto and made part of their role and one of their core competencies. So training. So I mentioned I was going to talk about this. At Adobe, we require all of our engineers to do 2 levels of technical training. There's we've got a bunch of white papers and talks about the kind of training system, so I won't get too deep into it. But white and green belt are computer-based training, and that's technical training based on OWASP Top 10 and common vulnerabilities and how to avoid them in code. And so there's training for engineers, software developers, and management in those 2 sections, and that's required for, as I mentioned, every engineer. And then there's also brown and black belt certifications, and that is through experiential kind of hands-on training. So that's something where if somebody is doing a security project, they can submit that. It's actually like a form that you submit and say, I've done this project and it's had this impact, and I've helped security for this. And then you get points, and then with those points, you can be awarded a brown and black belt. And so a lot of our security champions are actually going for this, and they're submitting a lot of the projects that they're working on to get kind of this elite level of certification. There's not that many brown and black belts. It does require a lot of work to get there, and so it is something that is pretty special. And then also, we do training specifically for the security champions. So down here I put our logo for Champ Summit 2016. So this is something where we get all of the champions in one location. So as I mentioned, they're all over the world. We have them in different countries. So we get everybody in one location. It's a mountain because it was in our Lehigh office most recently. And we get them together for kind of 2 days of hands-on training and some deep diving on how to do security things, our processes, things that they can go back and educate their team on, but also things like certifying them to help with their models and things like this so that they can have that experience. This is our marketing version of the SPLC. This is something that we publish in our white papers. And so we've established KPIs around each of these kind of boxes that have been pointed out inside here. So as I mentioned, training required 100% white and green belt, requirements, planning, and design. They have to have some level of engagement from the security champion and security researchers and architects. And then in development and testing, we've got static analysis that Taylor's going to talk about, as well as manual pen testing, staging and stabilization, and deployment have checkpoints for security as well. And then we also have monitoring, application monitoring, as well as OS system logging and monitoring. And in case of abuse, fraud, or interference response, we've got KPIs around how quickly you have to respond to those things. So it's important to establish the KPIs and make sure that they're something that's measurable and something that the teams can work toward. All right, so secure product lifecycle checkpoints. So I just wanted to kind of recap here. So we do training, establish a champion on your team, make sure that there's security testing, make sure that the compliance requirements are captured within the processes that you're giving to the champions, and it's something the same across teams. This is something that has been really helpful. We've been able to leverage security champions in our secure product lifecycle to attest to compliance for all of the solutions, whereas I think and auditors can go and pick a solution and know that they're all running on the same system here. It's not a different system for a different team. We also do threat modeling, and that's something like our security architects, but also security champions as well. And then ensure that measurement and KPIs are something that can be published far and wide and be standard. Automation, which Taylor's going to get into in a second. And then do recognition of your security champions. And I don't have a deep dive on that, but that's something that we really have noticed, is something that drives the security champion to do good work. They're recognized as a security expert on their team. It's something where the teams are kind of going to check with the security champion for doing certain things, or they're kind of the person who the engineering teams know has the information about what's going on with security. They get pulled into customer conversations and this kind of thing. And then finally, add value. So make sure that you're a security team that is adding value instead of adding process and overhead to the teams. So we try to abstract away as much of the overhead as we can and give the teams exactly what they need to be able to do the work. And so with that, adding value, I'm going to have Taylor talk about the automation that we set up for static analysis.
Thanks. Everybody hear me? It's working? Okay. I'm probably going to spend most of the time messing with the microphone, so that's what you get. So Julia mentioned that automation is a checkpoint for the SPLC. And in order to effectively manage the SPLC, it became clear that at a very early stage that we needed to automate almost every process because we were such a small team trying to scale to thousands of engineers. Specifically, what we were looking to do was like reporting and monitoring, because as we're all probably familiar, if you're not monitoring or reporting on the things you're doing, you might as well not be doing it. People aren't going to listen to you unless you have metrics around it. Compliance is going to basically say you're not doing it, those different types of things. So you have to have those monitoring and reporting things, and it's just too much of a task to do manually if you're the only one responsible for it, or even if you have a small team. It's just not something that is scalable, right? It'll take all of your time to manually report on all these things. Additionally, product team leaders need to see this information. They're not going to know what to action on if you don't tell them, right? If you just say we're doing security stuff or we're not doing security stuff here, they're going to ask you where and why and how do I make things better. Having the effective reporting and monitoring is going to encourage that and actually get them to see the value that they're adding there. So here's Cartoon Taylor again. Just to reintroduce myself, I'm responsible for security testing for the product teams within digital marketing. Includes our internal manual penetration testing as well as our automated testing. I want to go back to a case study and talk about an experience I had when I was just my humble beginnings as a security analyst trying to solve all of the world's problems. So I came in and decided that I wanted to come up with a solution for static analysis. So want to talk kind of like the world before automation, right? Or how the situation was when I came in to take a look at things. There was a tool there was a tool offered to teams that they could use. They could have access to it. But the responsibility was on the teams to perform their own scannings, right? Or scans. We would just say, here's the tool, go nuts, please scan your code, best of luck, that kind of thing. And it was kind of an opt-in thing. So as a result, there was very little utilization. So I sought to kind of solve this problem, see how I can help, partner with the teams as opposed to just giving them access to a tool and helping them utilize it, right? So I came up with the idea for kind of a static analysis as a service, which is what is extended to most of the activities within the SPLC is we have a requirement, but then we have a service offering to help them satisfy that requirement, right? So we don't just say, you need to do all of these things. It's, you need to do all these things, but here's how you can do it. Here's how we can help you do it. Here's how we can do it for you, right? And so it started with the static analysis as a service. And what I wanted to do is create a service that required little to no effort from the engineering teams to take advantage of it, right? There was no overhead or little overhead. Maybe they just needed to do a thing to get onboarded. But going from there, they really wouldn't have to do anything right, outside of their normal activities. Also wanted it to be centralized so we could do that reporting and that monitoring that we talked about. So compliance is happy, product leadership is happy. I wanted to create this service that satisfied the requirements for everybody, but also didn't require a ton of overhead. So I first went out to discover what I was dealing with, right? And as we've mentioned, digital marketing is comprised of a lot of acquisitions. So we have several solutions within digital marketing that represent companies that we've acquired. As such, we acquire their processes and procedures for developing software, their languages and technologies are all different, right? So different solutions within digital marketing could be different, right? It varies. So it's not just, we all use Java, right? So I can solve a problem for Java and we're good to go, right? We have a vast amount of languages and technologies, and trying to centralize that with one process, one tool, how was I going to do that? So additionally, I wanted to understand those workflows, right? Like how do our engineers, how do they develop code? How can I create a process that isn't going to be very disruptive, or at the least disruptive, right? To come in and say, you're doing great work, but I need you to spend 20% of your time doing this other thing that's completely outside of what you're doing, what you want to be doing, that's kind of a harder pill to swallow. So creating a process that was part of their existing workflows was really, really going to be really important as well. So another thing too was, it's great. I've had experience of creating these really cool processes and these really cool tools and having this UI you log into and it gives you all the stuff you want, but maybe not a lot of people want to take their time to go log into a different system to check status on things, right? They just don't want to, right? They have all these other tools and all these other things they're already working in for security to come in and say, oh, and by the way, for your security needs, go to our security portal. It's like, why do I need to do that? I'm working in Jira or I'm working here, right? Like, I don't want another login. I don't want to have to work in another thing. That's a waste of my time, or it's just inefficient at best, right? So after I discovered and collected all my data, I decided that I needed to create this platform, this automation platform to support this and other activities going forward. I saw the problem as being kind of big, so I wanted it to be scalable, and it became apparent as a team of one trying to solve this problem for all digital marketing. I wasn't going to be able to do it all by myself manually. Hundreds of millions of lines of code to scan, wasn't going to be able to do that on my own. So created this automation platform to be scalable. I wanted it to, although I created in the context of static analysis or code scanning, I wanted it to be agnostic of the input, right? So any input you could take and it could push out to whatever workflow you wanted, right? And I'll get into the specifics and what I mean a little bit on the next slide. But if it was a particular code scanner, or if we had multiple code scanners, or if you had a dynamic application scanner, or results from a manual pen test, wherever you got these results from, I wanted this platform to be able to consume that so we could push that out where it needed to go. So, if you had a code scanner and an application scanner and manual pen test, right, or whatever you have your results from, you have to either send out reports to engineering teams, or they have to log into different portals or mess with different tools to be able to see the results. I wanted a way to make it so that it was all in one place that they could see, and they didn't have to be trained on all of this stuff just to figure out what they had to do. So this was the result. This is the automation workflow that I came up with for static analysis, right? So we have our engineering teams. They write code, right? And as all engineering teams do, they check their code into some sort of source repository, Git, for instance. Automation platform then checks out that code, and it can be done on whatever interval you want, right? If we want to do it on commit, we can run the scan. If we want to do it on a weekly basis or a monthly basis or whatever interval you want. That's what we designed it to do, right? So we'll run these scans at whatever interval. Then this is the static analysis workflow, but like I said, the scanning or the input is agnostic, so you can replace that with whatever you want. In this case, it's static analysis scanner. We'll scan that code using all the APIs, obviously. Then our automation platform will pull down those results and parse and process those results. And we'll do a couple of things with those. We'll actually do quite a few things with those. However, I'm going to highlight a few. First and foremost, we send an email summary of what happened to whoever's been identified as interested parties, right? And a lot of times it's the product leadership. They just want to see that it happened and maybe see an overview of anything was found, maybe not specifics. Send it to the people who might be actioning on it, those different kinds of things. Additionally, we take those issues and inject them right into the bug tracking system, right? So right into Jira in this case. So our engineering teams don't have to go log into the static analysis scanner. They don't have to log into the dynamic analysis scanner to see their results. All they do is write their code, check it in, and then they'll see a Jira issue if there's anything they have to do, right? Nothing outside of their workflow. It gets put in. They can put it into their sprint. They can plan for it. They don't have to do anything. They don't even have to know the scan happened. And in most cases, the engineers don't. The security champions do because they're aware of the process, right? But as far as the engineers go, they're just checking in code, and our process will scan all of the code that gets checked in. So they don't even care. Another benefit of doing this is we're able to take the results and kind of, it's not deduplication per se, it's kind of grouping. So if anybody's familiar with the way like some code scanners work, is they'll give you an individual result for everything that is found. So if they find a particular issue in a file and there's 50 instances of it, that's 50 individual issues found in a report, right? Well, we kind of take that and apply a little bit of logic to it and report that as one issue. So if 50 of the same issues are found in one file, that's reported as one issue, because then the engineer can get one issue assigned to them. They see, oh, there's 50 instances in this file. I just need to fix it here and close it, as opposed to having to close 50 different issues or log into a system to do it. So there is a lot of efficiencies to be gained by parsing the results on your own as well. So that was the solution for SPLC, for static analysis, I'll talk about the rollout. Kind of a spoiler alert, it's been wildly successful, right? Having it so that teams don't have to do anything really means the adoption is really high. In fact, it's 100%. So when we do all of the heavy lifting for them, we go to them and say, static analysis is a requirement. You have to have your code scan at this interval as part of the SPLC. And, oh, by the way, we're taking care of all that for you. We're just letting you know, just in case you start to see these things come in, because these shear issues are going to come in, or you'll get these email reports. This is what it's from. So no worries, we've handled it all for you. Have fun, right? So anyway, how do we roll this out, going from the world as we knew it before to now? We made it a requirement. But instead of just saying, this is required of you now, figure out a way to do it, it says, this is required of you now, we've solved the problem for you, right? So that's kind of a key success to rolling out. Additionally, we partnered with the security champions. They are very familiar with the process. They know what's going on. They know how to communicate it to their teams. So nothing's a surprise if they start to get things in there, things that they need to action on. Additionally, if you're going to do this, some key things that I would kind of take into mind if you were doing this with a larger organization, maybe partner with one team or pilot with a team. Get your process ironed out and make sure that you can get that all worked out before you push that out to everybody else. And when you push that out to everybody else, don't just do a pilot with one team and then kind of open the floodgates for everybody else to be on it. Phase in the approach, right? If you have multiple teams and a dozen teams, maybe do a couple at a time. That way you can make sure if there's any customizations or issues with your system, make sure that your system can handle the load. Phase in an approach, I think, is going to be more successful. So kind of in summary, we talked about the SPLC and how it's intended to be a system to support the engineers in developing their software securely. And in our case, by removing much of the security overhead from the teams themselves, it's created a culture of partnership. So we can deliver software that we can be proud of. We can work directly with the teams. So as opposed to the teams kind of fighting and like writing their software and us coming in and telling them things they have to do. It's like, we're a team. We're on this together. So additionally, Julia mentioned the Champ Summit and other culture-related activities. Having the champs in place, having the mature SPLC has enabled us to do some really cool things in terms of culture, kind of freed up our time, even though we are a smaller team, to be able to put things on like the Champ Summit, or we've done things called Hacker Village, which is like a way that we can train people on pen testing methods and things like that. So we've been able to do some really cool things that give security a good name and builds a really good culture around security. This is all enabled by our SPLC.